At this moment, an exclamation of surprise sounded from the side. Disaster Constitution? As he spoke, a man appeared in front of the little girl. Beside the man was a little girl in white clothes. The little girl was also holding a small wooden doll in her hand. The man sized up the little girl, and the little girl raised her head to look at the man. The man said softly, "It really is the body of adversity." The little girl looked at the man and the man smiled, "Don't be afraid." The little girl said with a trembling voice, "I killed them. I'm the bad guy, right?" The man shook his head. A person's good or bad isn't determined by their constitution. Although they died because of you, you had no intention of killing them. So this isn't your fault. If you're wrong, it's your past life's fault, and it's also my fault. There are too many imperfections in the rules and order that I've established, and there are also too many loopholes. As a result, some powerhouses who are unwilling to give up repeatedly look for loopholes to reincarnate, and they even carry their past life's memories. As he spoke, he stretched out his right hand. "Come back with me. I'll protect you in the future." The little girl looked at the man for a long time, and then she stretched out her little hand and placed it in the man's palm. The man smiled slightly. "Let's go." The little girl nodded. Just like that, the man led the two little girls away. At this moment, the man turned to look at the village and said softly, "Your deaths are truly undeserved disasters. The next life is too long, so I grant you another life." With that, the air above the village suddenly trembled. In the next moment, countless soul fragments gathered. Not long after, soul bodies appeared in the air above the village. Soon, these souls entered the corpses below, and before long the people in the village stood up one by one. The man withdrew his gaze, and then he led the two little girls towards the distance. The little girl in a white dress suddenly tilted her head as she gazed at the man, and she said, "Master, even if they're alive, they'll only be able to live for a few dozen years at most." The man rubbed the little girl's head lightly and he smiled as he said, "Dao Yi, you're the eldest, so you have to understand that even if they're only able to live for a day, that's their right, and we shouldn't deprive them of that right." The little girl called Dao Yi blinked, "But there's slaughter in many places." The man smiled, "Change it slowly." Dao Yi hesitated for a moment and then he said, "It's very difficult to change human nature." The man grinned, "Take it slowly." Dao Yi nodded slightly, "All right." Meanwhile, the little girl on the man's right suddenly gazed at the little wooden figure in Dao Yi's hand. "Can I play with it for a while?" Dao Yi blinked, "No." The little girl lowered her head slightly and didn't dare speak another word. The man smiled, "I'll carve one for you when we get back." The little girl gazed at the man. "Really?" The man roared with laughter, and then he rubbed the little girl's head lightly. "Really?" The corners of the little girl's mouth curled up slightly. In next to no time, the three of them vanished into the distance. In the starry sky, the nameless little girl gazed at the little wooden figure in her hand, and tears flowed incessantly from her eyes. After a long time, she gazed into the distance. "Kill him and they'll tell me where you've gone." As soon as she finished speaking, she casually waved her hand, and the space in the distance split open. Actually, it wasn't the space in front of her that had split open, but the space in tens of thousands of stellar regions had split open. The nameless little girl stepped into the split space, and then she vanished in the blink of an eye. Divine Court Stellar Region. A certain space in the starry sky suddenly split open, and then a man walked out. It was none other than Yi Xian. Yi Xian put away the universal apparatus. He had to admit that this thing was truly abnormal. He'd only used less than an hour to teleport here from the demon domain. It was too fast. It was much faster than the teleportation array built by the Cosmos Divine Court. As if he had thought of something, Yi Xian suddenly said softly, "Looks like I'll have to make a trip back to Qingqing when I'm free." With this thing, he'd be able to return to Qingqing in just 15 minutes. After putting away the universal apparatus, Yi Xian looked around. At this moment, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in front of him. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "Who are you?" Yi Xian gazed into the distance and then said, "How do I get to the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man frowned slightly. "You're looking for the Cosmos Divine Court?" Yi Xian nodded, and as if he'd thought of something, he looked at the middle-aged man. "Are you from the Cosmos Divine Court?" The middle-aged man looked at Yi Xian. "Yes." As he spoke, he seemed to have discovered something and his brows furrowed slightly. "You're Yi Xian, who's on the wanted list." As he finished speaking, he was about to attack, but at this moment Yi Xian had already vanished from his original spot. The middle-aged man's head directly flew off. Heaven Final Realm. This middle-aged man was a peak Heaven Final Realm expert, but he couldn't even take a single sword. In the distance Yi Xian kept his sword and shook his head, too weak. As he finished speaking he left confidently. Yi Xian walked into the distance and not long later an old man appeared in front of him. Just as the old man was about to speak, Yi Xian disappeared from his original spot once more. Before the old man could react, his forehead was pierced by a sword. Behind the old man Yi Xian kept his sword and shook his head. This is the Cosmos Divine Court. The Milky Way galaxy is particular about not killing those who surrender. Yi Xian was speechless. P.S. A reader told me that I can stop updating for 5 days and then release 10 chapters at once. This way I can realize my bragging. Moreover, I can release 10 chapters at once without missing chapters. It's the best of both worlds. I thought about it for a whole night and I felt that there was nothing wrong with him. I'm going to give him 2 sets of physical books. One was the sword domain, and the other was the supreme one,